Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on where and when you're watching this broadcast. I'm Thomas Fessler, my friends, and this is Disclosure Tonight. Happy Friday, April 4th, 2024. How about that? We made it through the first quarter of 2025. And where did Disclosure go? Well, not too far, but you know, we've got a great conversation going on here tonight. We've got a special guest with us tonight, Mr. Ivan HANNEL, who is Lou Elizondo's personal attorney. He is a great person who's involved in Disclosure, was just with him recently in the good old, if you want to call it, state of the good old location, Washington, D.C., behind the scenes. Without any further ado, let me go ahead and welcome him in. Ivan, how the heck are you doing today, my friend?
Hey, Thomas, I'm doing pretty good. It's Friday, it's late, end of a long work week, and the week before was long too, but I feel good. You know, I feel pretty good, and although I seem like I have this beam of light, which I joke is my abduction beam, but it's just the sun. So yeah, I'm doing great.
Great to have you here. Now, everyone's going to ask the question, Lou Elizondo's attorney. Wow, interesting conversation. What kind of stuff do you work with Lou on? How are you involved with him? How does this thing come together? Because it sounds like, based on some of your tweets, you were even recently in D.C. and some of the meetings with people in the House and the Senate.
Yeah, I mean, I was there with him last week and accompanied him to a bunch of offices and met with a lot of people, and it was a great time, along with some others. And no, yeah, I'm Lou's attorney, deal with him, you know, on all sorts of issues. You know, he'll, whether it's contracts or just general advice. With respect to the UAP topic, I still call it UFOs just because it's what I'm more familiar with from the past. But, and also I don't know. I understand why they're called UAPs, but anyway, you know, he needs, like anybody else, there's statutes to look at, there's cases to look at, there's research to be done. And obviously, you know, when you're talking about, let's say, Congress, it's a political process, which ultimately implies law or procedures. And so, you know, it doesn't hurt to have me. And also, it's not just me. You know, I have a bunch of attorneys who are great friends, great colleagues. I won't mention them here, but they're excellent people. And we work together. And to the extent that we can, we give Lou our thoughts about things. And you know, he has I mean, Lou is a terrifically interesting. I'll just tell you, I just not to go sideways on your question, but he's a very curious person. He has a lot of interests and questions and comments and thinking. And so it's good when, you know, I'm part of his, you know, group, and obviously I provide advice directly, but I also rely on some great attorneys out there who help me behind the scenes. And so we provide different perspectives about, you know, all sorts of things, what to say to Congress, what meetings to take, how to get them, you know, just a general overview of this process. And I think anybody, you know, it's just a helpful thing to have. So and he's also, you know, now, after all this time, he's become a great friend, him and his family. They're just great people. I couldn't say, you know, he is a really wonderful person as a human being. You know, he is forthright. He is honest, and he's very kind. And I just have nothing but positive sense. So it's an honor for me to help him. I do it pro bono. I don't get any money out of this. And as everybody knows, and by the way, it's not just Lou. I mean, there are plenty of people in the community who reach out to me regularly for questions, and the advice is often not about, you know, our favorite topic. It's about other things, but sometimes it is. And I'm more than happy to engage people. So there is a role for law. Frankly, I think we need more lawyers involved in this in order to legitimize this topic and get it straight, because fundamentally we do have problems in law, right? I mean, that's really what's going on at the heart of this. We have some sort of crazy situation happening where we really need lawyers and people with legal skills to get more involved in this topic rather than less involved. So long answer.
If you consider the cover-up and what's been going on for the longest time, it's kind of like UFOs in Disclosure goes hand in hand along with potentially if you want to call it, well, UFOs and politics goes hand in hand, like UFOs and legal representation goes in hand, because there is that close tie. Because if you look at all the laws, all the legislation that's written, it's not written by individuals usually, in most cases. Sometimes it is, but a lot of times it's written by lawyers, right, Ivan?
Yeah, I mean, usually they have a legal background, or they should, and when they don't, they usually do things improperly, frankly, I'd have to say. Now, this doesn't mean that all congressional legislation, or all legislation generally, is perfectly written. Believe it or not, I've certainly, as an attorney, dealt with statutes which weren't well written and caused a lot of chaos in the civil domain. But the same can be true, certainly is true, actually, in some of the administrative rules and some of the rule sets surrounding, our favorite topics. So there's plenty of room for other lawyers. And, the hard part actually is, because I'm actually the chair of the litigation network, the Association of Corporate Counsel, and which is sort of a very large organization of in-house counsel, meaning lawyers who work for who work for corporations. But I also do a lot of other stuff too. But anyway, getting lawyers interested in this topic, while there are some who are just curious individuals, there is a great deal of stigma in this topic. And I've written about it, so it makes it hard for lawyers to actually come out and say, yeah, I'm interested in that. I mean, I have had state bar presidents, I've had top partners at major law firms reach out to me and say, I'm really interested in this. Or, they'll say, my wife was an abductee, or, just all sorts of stuff. But because of the stigma, the substantial stigma, I know people who have even lost, work opportunities and other things because of this. So trust me, it's not the, there needs to be more lawyers, but at the same time, it's hard to get them involved just due to things. I hear a dog barking. Is that? It's
I've got a husky here who's realized that she sees me sitting at the desk.
He just doesn't like lawyers. That's the bottom line.
Get up here. Come on.
I don't blame him. But anyway, so go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you look at it sounds like you had a really exciting time with things going on in Washington, D.C. People figure, why are you going and talking to people in D.C. in the House and Senate? But the reality is, not everybody is fully up to speed on this. And it sounds like a lot of this could be part of educational outreach to try and get people interested in this.
Yeah, I mean, look, first of all, let me just speak in general to my own observations about Congress. First of all, Representatives Luna, Burleson, and Burchett, really wonderful people, good people, very interested in the topic. Their staffs are great too. Nothing wrong to say about that, right? But that's three of them, and I'm going to include Nancy Mace and others who are really, in my opinion, proponents of this topic. They've expressed interest. They've tried to move it forward, right? But there's only a few of them, and there's 435 members of the House, another 100 in the Senate. And although some, on the Senate side have expressed a lot of, certainly expressed some interest, we have a lot more work to do. And that is really an indictment, an absolute indictment of prior efforts to communicate with Congress, because there's many of these Congress people and and their staffers. And it's important to, first of all, I'm going to pay a bit of tribute to the staffers. The staffers in our Congress are wonderful people. They are kind. They take notes. They try to be informed. They're attentive. They're cordial. They try to make things happen for their members and for all of us. And they are not particularly well paid. They do a lot. And unfortunately, though, they don't know about this topic, most of them. I mean, most of the House of Representatives and most of the Senate, this UAP stuff, I mean, you'll see them be asked a question and they'll have trouble defining, remembering what UAP stands for, right? It's just the nature of it. It's just, we're all so close to the topic. We think everybody knows about it, and therefore it must be a conspiracy to prevent things from happening. But, you live somewhere. Does everybody on your block now know about this topic because you've gone door to door and talked to everybody and given them information? Or could I see, is the guy 3 houses down, has no idea what you're talking about and thinks you're a weirdo? That's, what I mean? That's what we need to do. So we need to talk to Congress and give them basic information. And, it's not hard. It is not hard, but we absolutely need to do that. And so that speaks to the fact that a lot of our, prior efforts a community in communicating with Congress has not been, well done. Partly, I think it's because of the personalities of maybe some of the people who are in front of Congress. Partly, I think their ideas weren't the timely or the right ones. There's a lot of reasons I could go into it, but I do think that we need to realize that at least the members that we do have on our side really are trying. They genuinely have a curiosity about this interest. I could speak more to that, and I'd like to, but I just want to let the audience know and this ufology community know that, first of all, hope is not lost. I know things seem slow, but behind the scenes, things are happening. Maybe not as fast as any of us would like, but there is movement. It will be slow, but it's okay. We don't have a choice, frankly. And I think it is absolutely necessary, in particular, to get Congress involved. So much of the hope has been invested in the Trump administration, which, by the way, I do think has really people who are in it, who are very interested in disclosure. But, they have an agenda, and it's not the top priority. It's number, 6 or 9 or whatever it is. And they may get to it, and I hope they do. But but while we can, let's work with Congress. Let's get these people informed. Let's answer their basic questions. Let's give basic information to staffers. And if we don't do that, then it's our fault. And it does not help. And I'm going to just say this right now to everybody in this community. It does not help when you vilify members of Congress, or for that matter, the executive, because why are they going to pay attention to you? Why they're going to, what do they get out of this? This is a risky topic. Most people in America still don't believe it's real in the way that most of you, even watching this, do. So we do ourselves no favors when we negatively critique people, even if they have political views that on any specific issue you and I might, disagree with. I'm very pro-Ukraine. Obviously, that makes me a bit at odds with some of the policies of the Trump administration. Now, if his policies work and he gets a peaceful settlement that preserves Ukraine, great. I'm 100% in favor of that. But just because we don't agree politically on every single issue, there needs to be more of a practical approach, a pragmatic approach with members of Congress by giving them information, by developing relationships. One of the indictments I will say about the UFO, or some of the people who've been trying to influence this, is they've been very, I would describe them as sort of selfish and transactional. They just want this, and they want you to do it, and then you're supposed to do it, and then thank them for bringing it to your attention. That's not how it works. Any good advocacy involves building relationships. And remember, that's hard to do in, let's say, the House, because those people turn over every once in a while because they got 2-year terms and they're constantly running for re-election. So this is a long battle. It's like anything else. I wrote an article and I said, it takes time. Like think of marijuana. In a lot of states, it's now being, it's been approved and it's legal. In some states, it's still illegal, right? But it took a while for that movement to coalesce, to convince people to make it legal, and it had to be first medical, and then it became recreational. And any movement takes a bit of time, and you have to get enough people there, and we just don't have enough people there. And whose fault is that? It's our fault. We've got to do the on the ground work, not by threatening people, not by soliciting donations based upon how loud you are, but doing real substantive communication of basic facts. And to me, last thing I'll say on this, sorry to go on a long speech, but as I've been saying for a long time, everybody always thinks it's going to be one more thing, one more revelation, one more photo, one more video. And I think that would help, right? Like, I'm not saying that, for example, I think that declassifying a lot of photos and videos would prompt members of Congress to say, wait, what is that? Wait, what is that? What is that? And that would move things forward, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that it's not just any one thing. It's developing a series of relationships in the House, in the Senate, with the executive that will eventually, over time, lead us to change. But it takes time, like any other movement. And if you don't have the patience and the intelligence and the relationship building skills, if we send weirdos into Congress, we're not going to get the result we want. And, so think about who you're sending there to be your advocates.
Well, talking about Congress, and I know we've had the UAPDF that they've tried to get through a couple, actually the UAP Disclosure Act, UAP. They try to get through a couple times, and it seems like it's too big of a pill for Congress to swallow, potentially. Brian Pemble, one of our viewers, has a question. Ivan, thoughts on introducing a clean UAP bill to the House floor via a discharge petition, using the same method that Lunar recently used, or potentially breaking into smaller chunks to be able to get through?
Well, I mean, it depends on what you mean by a UAP bill. What would it encompass, right? What would be its principal
Well, take the
outcomes or result?
UAPDF and slice it up into like 4 or 6 chunks.
Okay, so I think you're confusing the UAP Disclosure Fund, right?
I'm sorry, I keep on saying
It's-
UAPDF. My fault.
It's okay, but let me just
The
give you a second.
UAPDA.
Okay, so the UAPDF, the Disclosure Fund, fantastic organization,
Yes.
nice people trying to do some good work. A fan of them. But for the UAP Disclosure Act, I'm frankly not a fan of it. It's not that I would be against it. If it passed tomorrow, I'd be like, great, right? But I think, for example, the eminent domain provision really, it's just a bridge too far. I put out a tweet maybe a couple of days ago where I said something to the effect of, imagine you were a member of Congress and somebody came to you and told you about something you really didn't believe in. So let's say, most of us, I think, believe that there's some UFOs out there and a program and all this other stuff. But let's say you don't believe in Bigfoot. So there's probably a lot of people who believe in UFOs, but who just don't believe in Bigfoot. Okay. If you're a member of Congress and you get a bill in front of you to, for the federal government to, be able to exercise, let's say, eminent domain over land, which it has the inherent authority to do. But let's say you put this into statutory form and you say, if Bigfoot is seen on your land, we want to preserve it for the ecology and so that it can roam around and do whatever it does. Are you going to sign that? Even if you don't think Bigfoot is real, even if you think it's insanity, I mean, why would you sign that? That doesn't make any sense. So many of these people don't believe, we're getting over our skis, right? They don't even know that this is real. So then eminent domain is not a good thing. And then as far as the 25-year look back, I think it is nonsense. Why do I need to wait 25? What was so different 25 years ago versus today? Like, I have no idea what that's about. And so I think that is ridiculous. I think the title of the bill, I believe, as I recall, when I read it, it was called, talks about controlled disclosure. And I always tell people in private, and I'm glad I have a chance to say it here. Imagine if you told the American people, many of which have, let's say COVID, right? Very controversial issue. Some people, think we should all have been vaccinated and masked, and other people who very much think the opposite, right? How about if I told you we're going to pass a bill called the Controlled COVID Truth Disclosure Act? Would you want to, even the framing of it as being controlled, people don't want to have the truth as controlled. So these whole things, and the opposite of control is not catastrophe. And that's been the binary framing of the binary mindset, which proposed this legislation in some respects.
Wasn't it introduced by Carl Nell, the one who was against the whole thing?
Look, I don't even want to bother with that. I would just say, look, that mindset, that mindset of control, and then saying that the opposite of control is catastrophe. How about just truth? And how about, why do we have to wait 25 years? What's that about? That we're going to gradually be given little pieces of information?
Since you brought up the C word, COVID, they actually wanted to make a lot of the information that was going to come out from what they learned when they were actually creating in potential studies. And the pharmaceutical companies, I think, wanted to stretch it out like 70 years or something before they're going to bring out the truth. If they have it, bring it out now, right?
Right. So it's the same nonsense. The whole framing is the paranoid, controlling mindset, which really, frankly, I mean, even the legislation itself, the fact that we don't know, or some, who it came from and who it was authored, that it was sort of authored in secret and then foisted upon the Congress. And granted, it was passed by the Senate, so there was some success there. But, look, I mean, that is the same stuff. It's the same mindset that we're trying to critique. Let's do something different. Let's not repeat the sins of the past and simply replace, the old with the new. We need to do something different. And so I do think that we can take some baby steps towards disclosure through legislation. And I very strongly support an idea that I think, Chris Mellon, I don't know if he was the initiator or author of it, but he's certainly a proponent of declassification of various videos and photos that would not, that really don't reveal any sources and methods. They've been taken with iPhones or technology that's 30 years old. I mean, what's the excuse, right? What's the excuse? What are you hiding? What amazing stuff could be there? If I take if some service person takes videos with an iPhone with something that looks very strange and it's not revealing, a secret jet in the background or whatever, why can't we see that? And why can't Congress see that? That's insane. So I think like that would work, right? Declassifying, the over classification of videos and maybe other data, telemetry data, maybe some radars, all of that stuff. Let's see it. That would be a good start. Lou Elizondo has proposed or has this idea for a national intelligence estimate. I think that's a fantastic idea. So there's many possibilities out there, right? About how we can practically move the UAP agenda for disclosure along. But things like eminent domain, these strike demands, sometimes I personally feel they're more for, are they more for fundraising than reality? Are they intended to just create shock and awe without any real effect? I don't know. I'm not a fan of it. I think we should do something different. We should do something practical. But again, whatever you do, it's based upon developing relationships with people. And that takes time.
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, you have a bunch of things on your list and different things you wanted to get to. What is the next thing you have that you wanted to address today?
Oh, well, I mean, I don't have a specific agenda, but, one thing I will say, just about Congress is the tone in the community, whether it's on X or elsewhere, should be more positive. And I'm not always the most positive person, but, because I'm always fighting various things, but I do think that with the Congress people, we should be positive and put on our best face and, not ignore some Congress people who seem to be very obstructionist. But for the most part, we should not, and I always butcher these sayings, but don't let, when something can be explained by ignorance more easily, than malevolence, then let's look at that, right? Maybe it's just a lack of information. Let's treat our Congress better. And let's also be, more positive in general within the community ourselves. There is, the community is frankly pretty toxic. I mean, that's just what I see. People treat each other, poorly. They're always calling each other out. They're always saying nonsense. And it doesn't help. It's not going to bring things forward, So, that's something I would say. Be positive, not only to our Congress and the staff and the members, but also to each other and try to see where, instead of how we differ or who's right or wrong, how we can align ourselves in a community of influence to persuade Congress to take our favorite topic a little bit more seriously.
Right. I guess since we're on this subject a little bit, if you look at the current standings in the current Trump administration, I'll say the T word, sorry for those people that triggers you, or look at the situation to where everyone is saying, well, look at this. You've been in there for 2 months. Why haven't you brought the stuff about UFOs? Where's disclosure? We want it now. You're never going to do it. And it's just all these negative Nancy's that are getting out there just trying to pull it down versus saying, where have we gone all this time? Give it a little break. Give it some time, some breathing room.
Yeah, the Trump administration, I mean, whether you like them politically or not, I have friends who are very against them. I have friends who are very for them. I'm kind of a centrist. I like some of the things they do and some of the things maybe I'm not so fond of. But the point is that, they certainly have an agenda. And I think there are very strong advocates for disclosure. However, there's other things to do. Obviously, they're prioritizing NATO, Ukraine, restructuring of the federal government, a lot of changes, the border control, so many things. And so I just don't think you can, just because they're not doing it right away as your number one priority doesn't mean that there isn't a good intent. But, there's only so much capacity in any organization, whether it's the Trump administration, the Congress, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, there's only so much capacity. So I think they're doing what they can at this moment. And I think there will be movement, but it's not going to be, just because you elect, Trump the president doesn't mean tomorrow, we see, UFO lands on the White House and everything else happens. No, it's not going to be like that.
Now, if our friends at Skywatcher could get their act together, and they said they can bring down a UFO whenever they want, they should bring it down right on the street on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue so everybody can see.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's what would be very convincing. Although I swear nowadays, if you brought back, literally if you had a UFO on the land on the White House and you'd have somebody say that's all AI, it's all fake. This is you just people wouldn't believe it anywhere. That's why I really think it's not like, one of the things that have been going on, for example, is, or one of the things I've always said is, it's not just one thing, right? It's not just Trump getting elected. It's not just a particular bill being passed. It's not the change in thinking, right? What does it take to change your mind? I mean, think about yourself as an individual, right? Maybe you started out not believing in this very much, or you've changed your mind on some aspect of it, right? Of the phenomenology, or whatever. How long does it take you to change your mind, right? Or to change something like your body. Like I want to change how I look. I want to get in better health. I want to change. I want to learn something new. I want to learn a new language. It takes a while to change thinking. And we think it's just like a light switch that all of a sudden I woke up and but it takes time. So let's give it time. Let's be persistent about our efforts and, let's move forward on it. So I just think it's going to take some time.
Well, everything takes time. I agree with that, Ivan. Just out of curiosity, let's say, hypothetically, that the current administration wanted to, like Chris Mellon suggested, declassify a lot of the information that the government has been sitting on for decades now on the UFO topic. What would be required for the president to be able to bring that information out publicly?
Well, I mean, I think the president can declassify many things, but there are certain rule sets within the executive that seemingly have been expanded to classify things that previously would have certainly not been something that that would have been unclassified data. Or wouldn't qualify for a classification. So I think it's going to take some legislation. I think it can be narrow. I think it can be succinct. I think it can, be put in the context of transparency and disclosure. And I think that's a starting point. So I think that at least my understanding, my sense of things from what I know, and I'm not a great expert in all the machinations of Congress and the executive, but I think in order to overcome the bureaucratic tendency to overclassify, we are going to need to get maybe some narrow legislation which require, which would help to remove some of the rules over certain kinds of information. So I think it's going to take legislation. I think it's got to be narrowly targeted. And I think that's what's going to do it. I don't know that the executive on its own initiative is going to suddenly declassify things. I could be wrong. But I think legislation at least is, and remember, again, this goes along with my whole theme that it's not just the executive deciding one thing or just the Congress. We need a holistic approach so that change happens. And that is really predicated upon disseminating and getting more people better informed about what the roadblocks are. And I think declassifying imagery, which has no revelation of sources and methods, is something we can all agree is reasonable to do, and might be the thing, because like everything else, seeing is believing. So when you see some of these images, from what I've heard, you would be very persuaded that there are some strange things going on in the skies or space or seas that need to be, that need to be investigated more thoroughly. And so I think that's what we need. I think we need narrow legislation to do that. Would certainly help.
Yeah, 100. One of those want to get down to the truth and bring it out. It's just a matter of time before we can possibly get there. Now, one of the, besides what you've been dealing with in DC and everything to that extent, you've had some other areas that you've been working in with regards to uncovering the truth. And this is about some individuals who were potentially brought in as children into a program to deal with psionics, for that matter, or a psychic link between the non-human intelligence and other areas. Do you want to take us down that path?
I'd like to, now that I've been freed from certain work, one of the things that I, began hearing a few years back was of this gay program and, talented kids and alleged, I don't know what you'd call it, maybe torture. or sort of involvement in a program, or maybe a series of programs to, long-standing, to essentially develop psychic or psionic or whatever the word is.
So really quick here, let me interject.
Yep.
What we're talking about here is back in the day, there were potentially programs going on at public schools or other institutions where they were going and screening kids for potential abilities, and then based on these screening, taking these kids, putting them into programs where they were subjected to, like you say, torture or potential other nastiness that went along the way for them to try and achieve their goal.
Yeah. And so for me, and this is one thing I did want to mention, is that I've really turned my attention to this. I know that there are many other people who've been covering this topic. For example, Ross Coulthart. And by the way, I'm just speaking about Ross just briefly. People have, I see people, there's always a critic for someone. There's certainly many critics of me. There's certainly critics of Ross and others, but I will just say this about Ross Coulthart, to get it out of, get it off my chest. I think he's an amazing person. I mean, to take a journalist who was with sort of ABC or 60 Minutes Australia, real credible person, eloquent, had some training as an attorney. He was an attorney in Australia, I believe. And, to really shift gears and dedicate so much of his life and time and resources towards a topic that really wins you no favors in the world of journalism at the present moment. It's not like, for him to do that and to take this seriously and to dedicate so much of his time and attention and money to such an obscure and risky topic is, and his expression of caring for the United States as a country. And I'm obviously I'm very patriotic. I just have all the respect for him in the world, and I'm glad. So he's very interested in this, I know, but I know others are too. And I've spoken to a variety of people, including some firsthand witnesses. Now, in order to build a legal case, we need to find more of these firsthand witnesses. I have spoken to some. I will say, and so this is sort of an open call. Now, it's not a casting call for all the crazies who are going to come and say I was part of, I was kidnapped and, I was going through all this stuff. But if you do believe that you are a part of this and you have some ability to substantively prove it, and there's unfortunately, and I'm going to talk for just a second about this. So I am very interested in this program. I do believe it was real. I believe it is something that needs to be investigated. I believe the problem is, it faces the traditional obstacles of how do we make the case that this was real and this happened. I would only point out, though, that the people who are going to be dismissive of this possibility, of this reality, when you look historically at any movement, right? So think about, you could be thinking about, gay rights. You could be thinking about civil rights. You could be thinking about other things, Agent Orange, Iran, whatever it is, right? The week before anybody, or the Catholic Church, the scandal in the Catholic Church, when they were moving the priests around, there was a lot of cover up of that in the 80s. Imagine a week before those scandals blew up, if you had told somebody, there's this crazy situation where these people are being, heard and they're, and then there's a cover up and all this, people would say you are absolutely crazy. And then a week after, it's come out and everybody knows about it, everybody's like, it was obvious. It was always going to be true. It was, this is not the way it works, right? I mean, that is kind of the way it works, rather, that people doubt something is real. And then a week after you expose it, of course it was going to come out. It was obvious. I think we're at the point where we're not a week before. Unfortunately, we're probably a year before. But this is something I'm taking very seriously. I will turn my attention to it. It may be the subject of litigation, but I need to find more credible people who either were themselves participants in such a program or are aware of the people who were, let's say, managing it or participating in it, to round out what would be needed for legal action. And this is something I am particularly interested in because my skill set is not, obviously, I don't do too many podcasts or anything like that. So I'm not what I call a podcast lawyer. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here. But I'm a trial lawyer, civil litigation, and that's what I do. And so I really do want to pursue this. But again,
another way to look at it, you say the positions and everything, but what you're there for is to protect people's rights. And if those rights have been violated, it's going after the parties that are responsible for this to stop what they're doing and take care of the individuals that they've potentially harmed, right?
Well, right. I mean, I do. It's not just about, in part, it's about righting the wrongs as you can. Now, sometimes you can't really right wrongs. The past is the past. I told a story on X where, a guy who was walked into my office one day. This is over a decade ago, and he said he was a victim of a molestation by a priest back in the 80s, and he was, I think, in his 20s around then. I don't know. Obviously, it happened earlier than that. And this poor guy never forgot it. He told me his story, and in fact, his parents didn't believe him, and they actually attended the funeral of the priest who had done this to him, and they accused him of being gay, and his first marriage fell apart, and so he's an old. But when he walked in my office, he was, I think, in his late 50s or early 60s. And he had done well for himself in life. He had remarried. He had good adult children. He was very, he had lived a good life, and he really just wanted to see whether more should be done. He wasn't looking for money or, to right the wrong. The priest was long dead, and,
right. But it's to stop it from, if it's still happening now, and to prevent it from ever happening again. That's the important pieces, right?
Right, exactly. And, it's about, it's about stopping it from happening again, but it's also about just knowing what objective truth is, right? It's that too. So it is two things. It is certainly stopping these kinds of things from happening. And for some reason, we always forget the lessons of the past. We just re-experience them with the next generation in a new way. It's very frustrating. But it is stopping. It is stopping that. Let me just shift gears really quick for sort of a related thought. The experiencers, and again, this is different, right?
Right.
This is different.
But this is an important piece here. Pay attention, everybody. This is a good one.
So at one point, maybe half a year, 6 months ago, I was talking to somebody, and they, as I recall, their point of view is something like, don't talk about the negative aspects possibly of the phenomena with respect to experiencers, because that will upset those people who've experienced trauma in the past. But I was like, well, wait a minute. What about the people who might experience trauma in the future? If you pretend that other people haven't had, had less than positive experiences out of all this, then we allow this to continue to happen, right? So I think the experiencers, just generally, and again, I'm not an experiencer, never seen a UFO, none of that stuff. I think they avoid me because probably because I'm a lawyer. They just would never beam me up. They'd shoot me back down, right? But I think the experiencers are sort of a third rail, and people don't pay attention to them. And I find it funny because it's like, if you can believe in, objects that can fly and do all sorts of crazy stuff and can be controlled with your mind or whatever it is, but you can't believe these experiencers might have had some connection or some experience themselves. It's kind of a strange, line in the sand for people mentally. So I think that experiencers are a community which have been given short thrift. Again, I'm not part of them. I don't know much of, I've talked to them, and their stories are interesting to me. I don't know how to relate to them because it's just such a different kind of experience, but I think that they should be paid attention to. And so
I think more than anything, speaking from someone in that kind of an area of stuff that I went through when I was between 5 and 8 back in the Midwest, more than anything, it's just an acknowledgement of what's been going on. And the most important thing I could say, I don't care about the shape of the craft. I don't care about their technology. I don't care how the craft works and everything. Acknowledge that they're here, and more importantly, tell us what they're doing here, because they're not just hanging out over nuclear sites, military infrastructure, and everything else. There was a lot of things going on over the homeland that affects the average citizens that kind of feels like if you talk about some of this stuff that you're going to wind up being accused of being in the cereal aisle between the Fruit Loops, Lucky Charms, or over in the bulk foods between the fruits and dried fruits and nuts. We're not there, but there's things that have been going on that can bring it up to a level of reality. I think that's what just a lot of us want.
Well, I do agree that beyond, and I'm just expressing my own point of view here. And again, by the way, I just be clear, I'm just talking about me. These are my thoughts. I don't share them with anybody else, but they don't belong to anybody else. Everything I say here today is mine alone. To me, the technology aspect of this whole thing is not particularly interesting. And I know that sounds really weird because a lot of people are in it for, they want to go to Mars quickly. They want to go to Japan. They want to use, they want the technology for money, or they want to be able to shoot missiles out of the sky, or whatever it is that they're interested in. And, as a guy, I'm 54 this month, and I live to see, I thought the internet would bring an incredible change for the better to our world. And it really has, right? But it's been also surprisingly tough, right? If you think about it, in the 80s, when I grew up, when we went to school, information was, limited. It was costly. It wasn't instant, right? And the internet changed that all. You could get an unlimited amount of stuff. You could get it instantly, and it was mostly free. But it hasn't resulted in this incredibly good, people haven't gotten better. People have kind of stayed the same in terms of their mental constructs, how they treat each other, sort of the 7 deadly sins or whatever it is, right? And so to me, the technology is not so interesting. But what really interesting is what you're talking about, which is the phenomenology itself. What does this mean for us? What is the intent? And also, one of the questions you bring up, which is surprisingly absent from the discussion at all, is what is the intent? And for me, my point of view has always been, at least, there's only 2 questions to me. What are these things? What do they want? It's as simple as that.
Yep.
And the what do they want has been given short thrift. And I think the answer may be, we don't know. But just because we don't know what they want doesn't make whatever it is out there.
Besides the observations the military has done over all their military sites, they've watched and what's been going on in other places, and for them to play stupid like they don't know anything.
Well, I mean, look, I can't speak for the military, or I have no idea why people are, hiding this presumptively. They may have their reasons. And, look, if it's the case, and I'm not saying that it is, but if it is the case that, somehow this technology is like really easy. And, if you just get a couple of rubber bands and a rabbit's foot and some, Coca-Cola, you can give somebody a device that'll blow up, a city. Yeah. I don't want everybody to know that, because there's a lot of crazy people within, 100 meters of this place. Right. But in general, I think people have the right to truth. And the truth is, we don't seem to really know what the intent is of whatever it is that is seemingly observing us. And we need to focus on that. And that should be one of the most direct commands of us to Congress, if we can make that request, which is, what is the intent? Let's find this out.
And as long as we can get... Go ahead, Mike.
I think the most important thing to get to the points that you're making right now, Ivan, is the simple revolution of a very simple answer, which we've been searching for over 80 years already. Are we alone? And obviously the answer is, the simple truth is, no, we are not alone on this planet. Get to that. Have the executive branch, Congress, whoever, admit that to the public at large, that we are not alone. And then we can go from there to the other questions that would then follow. But we haven't been able to cover that yet first.
Yeah, but you're asking the executive branch to commit to something where it hasn't even brought the Congress along. Again, remember, change isn't just because, Donald Trump walks out on the White House lawn and says, guys, there's aliens here. I mean, I suspect half the people wouldn't even believe him. They would just be like, he's lost his mind. He's doing this for a trick. He's, this is a Russian plot.
CNN would take the speech and take his face and make it look orange for everybody. It would just be, everyone would make fun of it rather than saying, holy shit, this is the life-changing moment.
Right. So what we need is a very sort of careful, normal, and not controlled, but we need a process where the Congress itself, as the representative, the sort of the people's house, right? That the House of Representatives and the Senate, the Congress as a whole, move forward in its understanding. But that again takes an iterative process of developing relationships with staffers, with members, with you know, and that's what it's going to take. And I think we can do it, but we just need to get a better presentation going so that we don't scare people off. But it does us no favors in this community to vilify Congress people, whether it's Mace or others. I don't think that does one damn bit of good. I think it's wrong. I think it's short-sighted. I'm not saying not to call out the people who we think are behind, you know, some of the obstructionism, of course. But when people are trying, just because they don't make it exactly the way you like, is not reason for you to discredit them entirely. I just don't see that as logical. It's not the way it's not the way you convince a juror. It's not the way you convince your colleagues in a business. You don't suddenly say you're full of malintent, right? So I think that that's something that we need to take to heart and try to be more cooperative and more positive and more informative. And I think that's going to create, you know, we gotta be the change we want to see. Last thing I'll say, just as a sort of a, you know, just going off on my little soapbox here is, you know, there are a lot of people. I sometimes wonder if the vitriol within this community is because, you know, there's always this hope that in the stars, in these creatures, and whatever this visiting us, that we're going to finally be perfect. We're going to get the power we want. There won't be fighting. We're going to get the this we want. It's going to be great. We're going to get the technology we want. There won't be cancer. I wish that were true. But we can't wait for the aliens to come to be better ourselves, right? That's not the way this works. We become better ourselves now. You know, I think it was Leo Tolstoy. I just saw a quote from him where he said, you know, people always want to change the world, but they don't want to change themselves. And I'm butchering his quote too. But that is the truth. Let's change ourselves. If we want to, you know, get access to whatever is good from above or wherever it's from below, I have no idea. Let's be better in this moment. And if we can be better to each other, then maybe we earn the right to have this insane technology, which can do all these marvelous things purportedly.
That's a good point. And I agree with everything that you just said, Ivan. You're right about that. But it also sounds to me like you're describing human nature. That's something that really has to be adjusted, if not changed, which is a very difficult thing to do, let alone say, and have done.
And what we're trying to do here, Mike, is adjust human nature to understand something that is not like us, completely alien to anything in any way a human would react. And it's just it's a complex thing. We want to embody, you know, human thoughts, human emotions, good, evil, etc. But things are so inherently alien. It's a slippery slope.
Well, we have plenty of time to work on us. You should work on, you know, we should all work on ourselves, you know. Speaking of expectations and sort of unreasonable ones, you know, just as I was saying, I don't think it's one thing. I think it's unfair to put the burden on any one person, whether it's Lou or for example, Dave Grush. He's, you know, now people are like, oh, now that he's there, he's going to be able to change everything. Really? I mean, is that even fair? Is that fair to him to say, oh, now that you're there, you're responsible for making all the change. And certainly if change doesn't happen in 4 months, now you're a bad guy. I mean, I can see it happening, right? This is insanity.
You are so on target, Ivan. I mean, because that's how this community can turn on an instant. You haven't given us what we want in the amount of time we want. I want my disclosure. I want it now. And they just act.
Yeah. And, you know, it's insane because on one hand, I understand where people say, you know, and as to Grush himself, I've never met him. I don't know him. But I will say that, you know, that I just think it's deeply unfair to him, although I'm sure he wouldn't have any comment one way or the other probably. But I think it's just deeply unfair to put any one person, whether your name is Dave Grush or anybody else, Lou Elizondo, whoever it is, that you are singularly going to make everything possible. That's just a tremendous burden. It's unfair. And it also is really precarious because, you know, people slip and fall. People change their minds. They get tired of stuff. Is that the way we want to be? That can't be the way we need to proceed on this sort of stuff. So, you know, I think it's, again, a pragmatic approach where we need to work with Congress, give them information, not pin our hopes on any one person. And by the way, I mean, I do hope Dave Grush has a phenomenal time and gives the information they need and moves the needle forward. But let's not make him the sole person. Let's make us responsible. And for all the people who are out there who are like, oh, Lou should do this, Dave should do this, these people should do this. What are you doing? What have you done? Right? Have you made a bunch of calls to your congressperson? Do you even know who they are? Do you know the staffers in your local area? Have you written to the letters, the editor? Or are you just out there on X tweeting, calling everybody a grifter? Speaking of grifting, everybody needs to make money, right? I mean, we all have jobs. I fortunately have several jobs, so I guess that's the way it goes. But people need to make money, and I get that. On the other hand, I think there is a right to say, well, if you're getting money, what are you doing with it? But there's not fortunes
Can I
to
say
be
one
made.
word?
Yes,
Living. Sir. Sometimes when people earn and they put time and effort into something and they write a book like Eminent or other things that are out there, you know what? There was a lot of effort that went into that. And yes, it's good that someone can make remunerations on it. Because trust me, I've made plenty of video games. You do what it costs, you go ahead and get it out there and hope that it hits that magic number where you start getting more money in that it costs to actually make the thing. A lot of times it's a break even or loss based on the numbers that you get in the contract, but something, if you do make some money, what I say is good for you, because you know what, it shows you're making a difference.
Well, to be fair, to the extent that there's this idea that people can make money, we should want them to. We should want this tech to be developed. We should want to incentivize people rather than punish them. Okay, so I agree, that's that. Now, as far as Lou and making a book, I mean, my gosh, he spent so much time and effort and suffering to make a book that describes his experience. And, you're paying, $16, $20, $30, whatever it was, I don't know. But I mean, you're paying some money, but I mean, people buy books all the time. They buy lattes. The same person who criticizes a book being written goes and buys 4 lattes a week at $35 and is like, oh, you should just give this away for free. Well, you do your stuff for free too. I'm able to be pro bono because I have, different businesses and I'm a lawyer and I'm okay. But and this is sort of my pro bono work, and I've done other pro bono work for my other passions. When I'm done with UFOs, I'm going to do child support enforcement nationally, because I don't think single parents parents the ones, there's very little enforcement of child support, and I think that's horrible. I think that our pets are mistreated universally, especially in this country, and we need to do better for them. So I have a lot of other passions that are not about, UFOs. But to the extent I think people should be able to profit for making work, yes, I get it. Now, taking, public technology for themselves, no, I don't think that's okay, right? But how we thread this needle is about the technology, and profit is one aspect of things that we need to consider holistically. People need to make a living. Profit does motivate people, and the technology just won't spring from nowhere.
All right, so considering they haven't been able to figure this stuff out potentially in a lot of ways for the last 70 or 80 years, getting into this new age of corporate disclosure, if you want to call it, it almost feels like we've got an additional layer, meaning, okay, the government used to hide it. Now we have these other organizations that are coming in and building yet another layer of they're spending the big bucks, they're figuring stuff out, but all of that is still remaining secret. How do you bring society forward if what they're doing is being maintained under stricter NDAs than what came out of the government?
Well, that's another set of questions, and whether those NDAs would be, let's say, valid or legal is a source of sort of a lot of, let's say, internal legal debate. I personally think that these so-called, the AK quote unquote whistleblowers can come forward and, talk to their representative, not their staff, but the representative, and say what their truth is. But that's my own point of view. And, others have different points of view. As far as whatever the corporations are doing, I don't know. I'm sure they're involved. I'm sure they have the tech or some of it. And, I don't know. But to me, again, that's not the place to go. The place to go is, again, just the basic starting points. What are these objects, right? And getting Congress interested. Remember, I already think that we've made a prima facie case. There is probable cause, let's say, over 70, 80 years of videos and testimony and photos.
Oh shit!
Many more videos and many more especially if they're high quality and not filmed from a potato or as as they say. But I think that. It's the focus needs to be getting the members of Congress, all of them, to individually, approaching them and saying, this should be something of curiosity for you. You should look into it. We want to know what they are and what they want. It's as simple as that. Then going into all the conspiracies and who's hiding things and where they are and who should get the tech and when it was given to them and eminent domain and registration and all these other things. Yes, those are important. We can consider those, but we have a lot of basic homework to do. And that's what the community, I think, really has doesn't comprehend. It's not like they're all hiding this from us. You can talk to the, when I was in Washington, was at a restaurant and somebody recognized Lou and they worked for one of the offices. And, they said that they were pretty, high up in terms of their, they were staff, and they were very interested in this topic. But I don't know if their member was, but they were, but they I think we just need more information so that we get more of their staff and more of the members invested in this as a topic. And once you get enough people there, then there will be, then maybe Congress will exercise some of its powers. To my knowledge, I don't think a subpoena has been issued yet. So we need subpoenas. We need them to take a stand. But for a long time, they've described the unitary executive, and so and which means the executive is sort of all powerful right now. And Congress has really been, over the last 20, 30, 40 years, not doing what it could do. So I think we need to focus on that more so than be so worried about whether a particular company is profited or has a UFO under Hangar 72 or whatever it is. I think we need to look at things differently.
Get to a more basic level. Again, there's a lot of different areas they could add on to it, but it's that basic foundation or platform of, I will go call it disclosure, or we can just call it just basic acknowledgement, which
yeah. Disclosure is a perfectly fine term. I just think that we're at a place where, as a community, let's make plans. Let's look for the small wins. Let's communicate effectively. Let's create cohesive messaging. Let's work together rather than at odds. Let's not vilify everybody. Not everybody is your enemy just because they have a different political take or they think these are wonderful creatures or evil creatures. Let's just get together and do the sober, practical things that make things happen. That's literally all it will take. And then we can attend to, did a particular company sequester technology wrongfully and use it to its advantage. We'll get to that, right? And frankly, I think, and I may be, I'm just talking my own thoughts out here, is the kids program, or whatever you want to call it, Talented Kids, GATE, I don't know what it should be called, but whatever it is, I think that if we can get a real case going in the future, it's not going to happen overnight, but if we can get something together that moves this possibility, this reality forward, I think that could be a certain turning, could be a waterfall moment. And I don't put all my hopes on that, but something like that would really get the attention of the members of Congress. I hate to refer to, Pizzagate, because I don't think that was at all true, and I thought that was quite silly, but it did attract tremendous attention because it implied that there was bad things happening to kids. Well, I don't think that was true, but I do think that, or at least I have no evidence that I've seen, but I don't want to know. I'm not interested in Pizzagate. Sorry. I mean, whatever happened there, I don't know. But I do think that if the Gifted and Talented program was used as a vehicle for, determining if some children had somehow incredibly perceptive abilities. I mean, the real question is it just remote viewing? Is it a relationship there between that and maybe communicating with these objects a la Jake Barber? I have no idea. But these are people, who I do want to communicate with. And anybody who does come to me, they're in for a thorough examining, in the sense of, I vet my clients pretty strongly. And I get to know a lot about them, more than they sometimes know about themselves, frankly. And that would be the case. So I'm not going to just take anybody who says I was a participant. It may be hard to find proof, but we will get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. From your side of the fence.
Yeah, well, it sounds to me, Ivan, a lot like you're describing. And again, nothing with the government is new or unique. It sounds like they've had plenty of precedents in the past with programs like you're describing. And as a prime example of that, I can tell you, Senator Frank Church had the commission to look into the CIA's abuses in this country, including MK Ultra, which involved children being taken and experimented on without their consent. So this is not the first time the government has initiated programs like this and used American citizens for their own purposes. And it sounds like this is another version of that. And you're trying to find out if there were people who were exposed to this type of program to come forward. And you'll do your best to not just vet them, but also, I believe, help them with dealing with this and bringing the truth out publicly forward.
Yeah, I
Right.
mean, that is definitely the goal. And, when you refer to the church committee, you're referring to, events from almost 50 years ago, right?
Right.
And here's the problem. Since that time, Congress has not, manifested its own power well, right? Things have shifted to an executive that is very strong and a Congress which is by comparison not so strong, right?
Right.
But why has this happened? It's not just because of court rulings, although that's certainly part of it. It's also because just of will, just of who you see yourself as a member of Congress. And it's multifactorial. But I will say this: we need to, if you look back, and I'm just sorry to segue, but look at the Gulf, not the Gulf War, but after 9/11 when we invaded Iraq and all of that. All of that was a debacle. Who was held accountable for invading, frankly, the wrong country? I mean, who has been held responsible? Okay,
Nobody.
Right. And the savings and loan crisis, or whatever it was, the financial crisis of 2008. Yet again, no one.
How many CEOs went to jail for that, Ivan?
No,
None.
And then COVID, this insanity. No one. Right.
Oh, but wait, we had people who were pardoned because of COVID. We don't have.
Right. So what I'm saying is that although I would love Congress to step up its game, I don't know that it'll happen, but it certainly won't happen if they are not informed. So again, it's an iterative process. If you want Congress to institute a church-like commission to investigate this whole thing, well, you got to get them information. And that means most of the members of Congress have to believe this is something that's important. And to get there, you can't have, weirdos showing up to Congress and, just seeming like very strange people. You have to have normal people. And I will say this, Lou and Chris Mellon, for example, are two of the most persuasive, calm, rational, nice people. We should be lauding them for taking the time out of their lives to try to communicate about this topic to the public at great personal cost. Frankly, it's not. I'm as a lawyer, people. I certainly have faced concerns by people who are like, are you sure you want to do this? There's a lot of stigma. There's you seem crazy, but I don't care because you can't touch me. I just can't be really touched in that way. So, but there aren't that many people like me who are afraid to, who are not afraid to just come out there and say what they think. But I'm going to do that. And so Chris and Lou and people like that are very compelling advocates for us, and we should be thankful to them, right? And I don't just say this because I admire Lou as a friend and as a client, but also because I admire him as a person and his integrity. And Chris Mellon, what a wonderful person. I mean, we really have great advocates out there who can make our case, but we got to join him and we got to support him and stop taking silly pot shots and stop criticizing everybody. And just the people who are full of negativity are not helping us. And we got to sequester them, put them in a room, ignore them. They don't help what we need to do. So, I think we have a path forward, everybody, is what I'm trying to tell you. And I think you should have hope. If you don't have hope, there's no place to go. So be hopeful, trust in this process. We need to change the measure of what we're doing, be a little bit more narrow, be a little bit more persistent, be a little bit more communicative, be a little bit nicer. And I think if we do that, there is a way forward, right? But if instead Congress is bad, Lou Elizondo is bad, Lockheed Martin is bad, okay, who's left? We just have, it's just us. And they are reflections of us. Our Congress is a reflection of us. Our executive is a reflection of who we have chosen to be, whether it's the Biden administration, the Trump administration, there's obviously differences there, but these are reflections of us. We must be better. And I think we can do it. I really strongly believe in the American people. I believe in our community. And this is the last thing, I'll just kind of get off of my soapbox again, but I had a cat who I thought had cancer. Unfortunately, I don't think that it does now, and I'm really grateful for that. But I had so many people on X, nice people who are prominent in the community, whose names I won't say, reach out to me and just offer the kindest offers of help, of feeling for me. And they didn't have to do that. There are nice people out there. So most of the people are nice. If we work well together and play well together, I think we can accomplish a lot. And I think disclosure, probably not, one hearing away, or one, executive decision away, or one video away, or one documentary away, or one revelation away. It's going to happen, because I think the truth is there, and I think there is a building curiosity. And I mean, look at the drone issue over the East Coast and elsewhere. That is insanity. But we haven't gotten enough people in Congress outside of, the states that were effective to say, what the hell is going on?
Right. But those we do have in Congress, Ivan, like I recently saw a tweet today from Kirsten Gillibrand talking about this, trying to lump the situation that was happening in New Jersey and the Eastern Seaboard that started around November 18th of last year, going until like December-ish in that time frame. That was one particular type of incursion going on, but then you have the stuff going on at Langley a year and a half ago, plus all the other military locations that it's happened in, nuclear sites for that matter, over the decades. It's throwing everything into one bucket gets difficult, because each particular situation should be evaluated on its own, because honestly, the stuff we saw over Langley was nothing like the stuff we saw over New Jersey. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and I have friends or people online who've sent me videos from Florida. There were certainly drone incursions over the Midwest. I forget which state it was. I think it was Colorado and maybe Montana. Yeah. I forget exactly Wyoming, but wherever these things are, look, we have definitely, and one of the things that Lou makes a point is we definitely have a problem between, these, obviously these drones and sort of emerging all domain technologies. That's the phrase, these emerging technologies, but seem to blend, and they don't have all of the observables. So, to my knowledge,
right.
Not all of these
an
drones.
Object that's flying 150 to 200 miles an hour that's not visible on radar is not the same thing as an object that's moving 14,000 miles per hour and not visible on radar. So we just have to look and say in the bucket what we're dealing with something along the lines of a human type of capabilities, advanced albeit, but within our this wheelhouse, or are we truly looking at something that's well beyond the scope of humanity?
Right, and there may be some, you can imagine that is maybe some successes in the reverse engineering of these vehicles, if that's true, could lead to some aspects of drones that are advanced drones that would seem to have some unusual features. I don't know. There's so many questions. Why can't you get a good photo of these damn things? I jokingly said, let's get a helicopter and a spotlight and let's try to go chase one of these things. And I actually meant it, but nobody, I don't know why. About that question, I have a bookmark I made earlier today when I was talking to Mike.
Dragon.
Let me go ahead and just bring this up. Why can't we get a good picture of these things? Where's that at? Let me bring it up. If you go ahead and hover over me where I'm talking and say pin, you'll be able to see things a little bit larger. Let me go ahead and get this.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you.
Got it. So let me go ahead and get to interview full guest. Here we go. Here's something. They're in a gallery looking at something that looks like a dragon, right? And
sure.
As they walk past it, the dragon looks like it's looking at you, and they move back and forth.
Right. It's that illusion.
But as you get to it and they get close to it, this is actually what you're looking at and how it works. So a lot of times, sometimes we're seeing this, but in reality, what we're seeing is something more Like
Thomas,
that.
now you made it so that everybody's going to claim these drones are like fine pieces of cardboard with
No,
notes
no,
on
no,
them.
not at all. I'm just trying to.
I'm just joking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I get it. I get it. Look, listen. I hear what you're saying. I think the drones are a really curious issue. I think that, they disappeared to some extent from public attention, but not everybody. I think many of the representatives are still very curious about it. But you got to understand, there are people in Congress who probably just don't even think about drones at all. Despite the videos, they're just not there. So this has to be yet another thing. So there's so many very practical things that we need to engage, push on in Congress, give information, communicate about, and I think we'll be so much better off. This is something that we can do. So please don't give up hope, but understand that our approach needs to shift. And remember, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, just like UAPDAs, frankly. And that's my opinion personally. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result won't work. Let's have a different approach. Let's use better people, more practical people to communicate with Congress properly. Let's sober up. Let's work cooperatively. Let's be positive towards each other rather than, calling everybody a grifter, all the nonsense that happens on X. And I think we can do some really remarkable things. And I will tell you, I have met people who are doing wonderful projects who are trying to find out, let's say, one of the questions I've always had is, what is the architecture, the financial architecture behind these programs? And there are people who are doing some really interesting work trying to figure out how it could be that an organization that is kept quite a secret for a long time could be, kept hidden. How does that actually work? That's a real mystery, because if any of you have worked for a corporation, you know that there's like a finance department, an HR department, there's technology people, and they all have to work in synthesis to make an organization run. So that particular, figuring out the architecture behind all of this is going to be a very interesting adventure. But like I said, all of those things, the architecture of the program, the technology, all of that, the corporate part of things, is subordinate to talking to members of Congress in reasonable ways, communicating with them the basic facts, because many of them don't know it, and then seeing what happens and seeing if you can pique their curiosity. We have to be persuasive, not punishing, and there's a difference.
Yeah, absolutely, my friend. It's a great position to.
I see some hands up, so if you want to.
Yes, I was about to get to Brian and then Alice.
Yeah, Ivan, I really appreciate you coming on, and I got the chance to meet you in Tucson, Arizona with Lou, and I really appreciate your work. So I want to thank you for coming on and everything else like that. I was the person that put the question earlier to, why don't they chop up? Yeah, the UFPDA. I agree. There's some things that could be rewritten in there, but they could chop certain sections of it up and bring it to the House floor, even if Johnson doesn't want to do it, via a discharge petition. And I think that may be one of the ways bringing up to circumvent things, to think in a new fashion. So I'd be curious to get your opinion further on the discharge petition specifically.
I really don't have. I'd have to investigate that thought more. Again, I'm not against the UAPDA's intention. I just don't think that was the right way to go about it, and for a variety of reasons. Maybe it's again, getting to know our skis. So give me a minute. I'm sorry I can't give you an answer immediately, but just like a judge, when they ask me a question, sometimes I have to say I'll have to come back to you with a more thorough analysis, and maybe we can communicate privately, and I can get a little bit better understanding. So I apologize. Right now, I'm not going to have a firm answer for you other than to say it doesn't sound like a bad idea. However, let me give it some more thought. One of the things that lawyers sometimes have to tell somebody is, I'm sorry, I can't give you an answer right now. Give me some more time to investigate. So I'm going to have to give you that kind of answer today, but I will come back.
Sure, and I appreciate that. I in my belief, I think there is the votes in the House and the Senate to get to the president's desk in some chopped up form. Now, I could be wrong.
I would disagree with you on that, only because I do not think that most of the members of Congress know enough about this issue to vote for it in a way where it would be meaningful to them to do so. They would be voting simply, out of maybe not for their own reasons, but for imposed reasons or something else. I just don't think that's the way it's going to work. But here's the hope. And let's say, who's the next one? Is it Alice?
Alice and then Greg, yeah.
Yeah, hi, Ivan. Thank you for taking my question.
Sure.
I'm wondering how you and Lou crossed paths the first time.
You know, I just met him. It was an introduction. There was a meeting. I don't even recall why. And, he started talking to me and he expressed, that he had a variety of legal questions and issues. And, I said, well, let me see if I can handle some of them. And I did. And, over time, as we got to know each other, we explored more of these issues. So it was a very organic thing. It wasn't, it was just random, really. So I don't have a great backstory there. But as I got to know him, I will tell you, I have the utmost regard for him. He's a very decent person. He means super, super well for all of us. I don't think he has all the answers. I don't think he would claim to. And, I have a deep respect for him, both as a client and as a person, and as a friend. So I can't give you a great, we were exchanging briefcases full of UFO material. It wasn't like that.
I'm wondering, when you first met him, were you skeptical about the subject of non-human intelligence? And has his testimony changed your mind?
So those are two questions. Was I skeptical about non-human intelligence UFO? Because I've never seen one of these things, and I've had no direct experience, and no UFOs, no aliens at night, no, none of that stuff. So am I skeptical? Well, I mean, it is outside the range of my experience. But do I believe that what his assertions are true? 100%. And do I believe other people? Because not just because of what he said, but because when you look at the picture holistically, which is, I think, how we have to present it to Congress. It's not just about Lou Elizondo or Dave Grush, as great as those two people have been. It's not about, Jacques Vallée and all, the history of it. It's not about the 52 incident or the Virginia incident or the Zimbabwe stuff. It's not, or the nuclear, Robert Powell. It's not one moment that convinced me that we have an issue to look into, and our Congress and government seems to be not doing the best job in engaging this issue. So it was many things, but Lou was clearly a tremendous advocate, a tremendous speaker, and just a good person to be an advocate. I couldn't be more impressed at how well he communicates. And so he persuaded me, but it was more than just Lou. It was others and reading and listening and watching a million podcasts and listening to people and talking with people. And I still have no idea what the reality is. I do suspect that we do have, just as many of us suspect that there are craft in our possession, that there may be a series of non-human intelligences engaged. I don't know even how that means. None of it really still makes sense to me. I mean, why would some great technology, if we are able to acquire these, whether by accident or by, some efforts of our own to, let's say, bring them down? First of all, why would we do that? That sounds crazy. I mean, all of it doesn't make sense to me. So I can't pretend I deeply understand or, that it makes a coherent picture for me. But Lou is a good person. I trust him. I trust that most of the stories I'm hearing are true, or at least people are telling me their truths. Whether they ultimately end up being true is that's, in law you have that, where people think that they're telling you their truth, but whether it's actually what an objective person would think, I don't know. So for me, but I am persuaded, and Lou is certainly a part of that. Yeah. And I'm sorry, what was your other question if I didn't get to it?
That answered it. Thank you,
Okay.
Ivan.
Yeah. Go ahead. Any others?
Well, that goes on to Greg and then Ed.
Okay. Greg, Ed, let's go.
Hey. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. Chat, everybody. So listen, my question to you, good sir, this evening is, do you find it odd that most of these folks who claim to come face to face with these rays, beings, whatever it be, are still so ignorant as to where they judge, like you were saying earlier, how they judge folks? Don't you think if you were come face to face with these kind of beings, you would have some kind of enlightenment, and I think the world would be a better place? Or, I mean, what are your thoughts on that kind of thing? And is that how we actually know someone who maybe could be lying to us? If they're not enlightened by coming face to face with these beings, they're still judging other folks.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, people have different experiences with all kinds of stimuli or trauma. You know, for somebody, they go to a building that's beautiful and they're like, wow, this has changed my life. Now I dedicate myself to beauty. Other people go into the same building and can't wait to go to lunch across the street at the cafe. I have no idea that there should be one way in which everybody experiences their reality. I think that's very, like, that would be imposing my belief system about how you should experience your life. So no, I don't think that, whether it's some personal experience with these beings, and some people have told me very positive experiences, some people have told me very negative ones. I don't know what to believe, but I'm less concerned about them than are us. Our greatest enemies are ourselves. Look at us, right? I mean, look at Putin. He's invaded Ukraine. What does he want? More land? Right? Like, I mean, you know, it's like, oh yeah.
Not a proxy war. That's not a proxy war in your opinion.
Well, listen, I'm not
politics. I know that wrong.
But I'm just saying that, you know, we have a lot of work to do on us. How people experience the phenomena is not for me to judge. I would assume that somebody who says they've had a really bad experience with it is telling their truth, and somebody who said it was enlightening and changed their lives for the better is also telling their truth. And I think both can coexist. And the problem we have is that we cannot even allow, for some reason, people to have divergent experiences with their own reality. It's crazy. It's like if I said you had tried a certain flavor of ice cream, you should always love it. I mean, what's that?
I love this. I love this. I love your lawyer talk. You totally evaded my question. That's great. I love lawyers.
Well, what is your question? My
question was, like, how could somebody be so ignorant who claims to come face to face with these beings, but yet we have so many ignorant individuals and you know, around us, you know, these people who call other people for this and that. I mean, just on, like, I guess the ego level. No?
Man, I'm sorry. I just don't think I can call anybody ignorant who didn't have a positive experience with something just because.
But we still do it.
Pardon me?
But we still do it, though. I'm just asking you, like, on a personal level, like, you know, like, say you're sitting in the garden, like, what are your thoughts
about, like,
about the question, like, how can somebody be so ignorant who claims to have come face to face with such beings and, like, touching, like, the ground earth and the positivity, but be still negative? I feel that's how we can call these people out, the fucking fake individuals. Pardon my French.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess you're ascribing them to being ignorant because they don't relate the same experience you would expect them to have. But to me, I want to allow them to have their own freedom of experience. And so to me, that would be the greater ignorance. But and I'm not sure if I perfectly understood your question, but let me get to somebody else's question. And I hope I've honored your question, at least to someone.
You did a great job, Ivan. Let's move on to Corporal Abe.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Ivan, thanks for coming over to the show today. What's the future looking like for you and Lou? Like, where are we as a society going to be in 5 years with Lou?
Well, you know, I don't have any psychic power, so I need that mind reading or whatever to tell me what you're thinking. I'd love to know. I didn't know, you know, my wife and I joked that 5 years ago, we didn't know we would be living in Northern California, that, you know, so many things would pass, nor would I be working with some, you know, stuff about aliens. I mean, it seems pretty nuts. I didn't know 5 years ago. I didn't know 5 years ago that there would be a mild flu called COVID. I'm sorry, I know it killed a lot of people, but relative to the Black Plague or the 1918 flus, it was not like that. And I wouldn't expect society to have fallen apart. I never would have thought that when I went to, you know, San Francisco, the city would be a wreck. When my parents told me when they were there, it was this lovely town, and it still has some good things. But I guess my point is I don't know what's going to happen in 5 years. But what I hope to happen is this. I hope that for Lou, he has some peace, because he has borne a burden that none of you will ever know. And not just because of, you know, just this tremendous struggle. And so I hope he's in peace, and I hope he does, and I hope he continues to have a very active and prominent role, because he is our best spokesperson on this topic, and he is a good human being, notwithstanding the frankly bullshit you see on X about it. And those people, I'm not fond of them. Okay, but anyway, outside of that, for Lou, I hope that he, I think he can do good for this movement. I would love him to be a part of. I'm sorry, go ahead. What'd you say, sir?
No, I'm sorry. That was somebody in the background. I'm listening to you, but I want you to.
Okay, no problem. I can see you running around out there. Look, I hope that Lou is an even more prominent voice. I think it would be excellent within the Trump administration, if that would be possible, but you never know what the future holds. I think he's a tremendous voice in Congress. When they ask him to give information or testimony, he is very eloquent and he presents a decent view of things. I think he's balanced. So I wish nothing but the best for him. For me, honestly, my plan is to roll out of this at some point. I plan to go to Spain and have a donkey and a bunch of animals and just hang out and let the world do what it does. But in the meantime, I'm going to help as much as I can to move things forward. I don't know what that imagines to be, but I do think we're going to get the disclosure. My prediction is that in less than 5 years, we will see a disclosure that there is some phenomena happening that we don't know ultimately what it's about. And if we can save ourselves from killing each other with the Russians or the Chinese over, utter insanity, then I think we will move towards greater unification. But again, we need to move towards, frankly, the more spiritual, the more experiential parts of things, and less focusing on that. If we get this technology, we can build subdivisions on Mars. Like, who gives a shit?
Exactly.
Just as a follow-up.
Yes, sir.
Do you think we need to achieve like a one world government to reach disclosure? If we did that, would we hit that 5-year mark?
No. We don't need a one world government.
Governmental world thinking is how to get us to disclosure. What are we going to do for like all of us that are sitting here waiting, like with ants in our pants to get to disclosure? How do we get there?
First of all, one world government, that's not happening. B, the diversity of viewpoints, right? The diversity, government is local, right? You have a city and county and state government in the United States for a reason. We had a federal system, right? It makes sense to do so because local needs are different. What you need in California is different than what you need in Wyoming, and what you need in, South Florida or wherever you may be, sir. So no, there's not going to be one world government. I don't think that is a prerequisite to any kind of movement on disclosure. Certainly it would be nice if we had more cooperation internationally towards figuring out this phenomena, because certainly this phenomena is not aligned with, in my estimation, any particular country, race, or anything. It may be just simply otherworldly or within our world, but you know what I mean? So I don't think we need that. I think we just need to proceed apace, and I think the United States and other countries can unify. And one of the things we need to do is bring people of the one of the things when I started a signal thread. It's called Convergent Interest, and it has a lot of people in it. And I've since left it because I was just too busy. And it's very divergent points of view, right? And I called it Convergent Interest because I wanted people to come together with different expressions of thought, but learn to talk to each other and be good to each other. And there's no rules. Everybody's just got to do everybody's just got to be cool. And so far, for the most part, apparently it's done a pretty good job of that. So I don't think we need a one world government imposing some unified point of view. Rather, I think we need to learn how to collaborate and be nice to each other. And then from that, I think we will make greater success or progress towards transmitting information. Because right now, certainly we're not communicating what we think is probably going on to our adversaries. They're certainly not helping us in any way. I do think there is an adversarial process at work here, and that's really unfortunate. But frankly, with the way the Russians and the Chinese are, I just gotta be honest. I don't have any. I'm not looking forward to them succeeding us in getting to whatever technological aspect will be. So, no one world government for me. No thanks. I'll pass on that. On the other hand, I don't think it's likely, and I don't think it's necessary.
At least we're moving away from the WEF.
Yes, the World Economic Forum. Sure, yes. I get that. Yes.
Thank God.
I'm sorry, I don't know if I answered that, but a couple more questions. Let's go.
Ed, go ahead.
Well, Counselor, it's good to have you on the show tonight. I really appreciate listening to you talk about this. I appreciate what you're doing for Lou and any pro bono work that would help move us forward. As you can see, I'm sitting in my lawyer chair. You won't understand that's an inside joke. And I have a question for you concerning disclosure. Several topics have been discussed tonight, what you can get out of Congress, individual whistleblowers, things like that. But I'm of the opinion that disclosure has one major thing that is holding it back. and that is these beings, aliens, whatever, not wanting to fully disclose everything yet. It's as if there's an agenda associated with their stalling. Now, you can tell me there have been a lot of sightings, some of them individuals, some of them groups. Some of the ones we've talked about in the past are the school groups in Australia and Africa. But what's your thoughts on whether or not we cannot get full disclosure until the collective beings of these NHIs agree that it's time for full disclosure?
You know, I that is such a great speculation. I just don't know whether it is the case that there is some, you know, that the NHI, as they may be, are, you know, controlling the disclosure itself. I just don't know. You know, there's a lot of puzzles there. I mean, if you were trying to surveil a, let's say, a, you know, as I recall, there's some community in Indonesia, which is still sort of an untouched tribe, and or some deep Amazon tribe. You
right.
know,
It's off of the tip of India to the southeast, and it's in the northern or in the Indian Ocean.
Fair enough. It's hard to imagine there exist any sort of untouched communities, but let's say there
are communities like that in the Amazon as well. Still.
Okay. Right. I've heard that. I just you know I believe it. And would you send something that could break down or be shot down to surveil it? I don't know. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Would it be, you know, are these things gifts? I don't know. I mean, I just don't know. I just don't know. But I don't know what their intent is. And, you know, and it'd be very hard. Let me just give you a hypothetical. Let's say you could talk to an ant and you could create a cell phone that the ant would answer, and it's very little, and, you know, you talk to the ant. What would you have to say to it? Would anything make sense? You know, would you be saying, shoot, tax time is around the season. I got to file my taxes. I better go itemize things. Sorry, Aunt, I'll be back later. What would it even make of that? So well, I don't even, you know what I mean?
Start at their level. Would you not start at their level, and you would try and speak to them on grounds that they would understand, like we would expect a non-human intelligence to speak to us in our language and how we speak and
what is the intent of the communication, right? Like, why would you want to communicate? That's another question. Like, what, you know, there's plenty of people who I never call because I don't want to talk to them because I think they're idiots. Okay. Just, you know what I'm saying, Liz? So it's like, you know, I don't know. I don't know what their purpose is, what their intent. That's one of the great mysteries. Remember, those are the 2 points. What are these things? What are they here for? I have no idea what that is about. So, sir, I'm sorry. That's a great mystery. If you know, let me know when you find the answer. Bring me back on the show and you tell me what's going on. I have no idea.
Well, if I get the answer and I do let you know, will you promise to call me, because I'm not an idiot? Is that okay?
I will definitely. You don't sound like an idiot. You and I can go into the beam of light, and hopefully they'll tell us what's going on. But I'm waiting for it. Like I said, one of my great disappointments is that I will never. I just have this suspicion, probably a self-fulfilling prophecy, because apparently you have to have good intention or something. But I actually have no great love of whatever might be out there. Because to the extent that, you know, we as humanity are not doing very well and could use some positive inspiration, you know, flying around and appearing intermittently and hiding behind trees and taking people apparently without their will, and all this stuff is just super weird to me. Like, you know, just go home if you're going to do that. You're not even help. We need help. We don't need, you know, weird things appearing in the sky randomly. But I can't tell them what to do, and they got their own process, so it is what it is.
Well, you've got a well-formed argument, Counselor. I appreciate your time, and I'll throw it back to Thomas.
Couple more, and then I got to roll. So let's do a couple more.
All right, let's hit Tia. Go ahead, Tia. Yeah, once.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Tia Marie.
Ivan, for coming. But
Sure.
I wanted to ask you, Lou had been seeing plasma, green or blue plasma in his house since he's started all this. Have you had any experiences?
Listen, I would welcome any kind of plasma, any kind of, I know people are like, don't get in, don't ask for it. But listen, if I had any sort of hitchhiker come my way, they are welcome to hitchhike in. I'm not afraid. I don't really, you know, I'm not 54. I'm not going to be here forever. I'd love to see whatever is real. And they're welcome to it. But no, I have not had any hitchhiker effect simply because of my proximity as a lawyer in this thing. And like I said, I think they just find me, I'd probably be shaking a fist at them saying, make things better, not worse. You're weird and leave me alone. But so I'm probably not the candidate for blue plasmas or, visitations or abductions or anything else. If but anything, I'm the anti of that because, again, I'm not here. One thing people don't understand is I'm not here for the aliens. I'm here for us, for this journey. And that's why I'm in it. I'm here for the people. Have you
gotten any pushback from?
I don't care.
Anybody?
I haven't gotten I don't care. I mean, what pushback would I get? Somebody would say, "Oh, you should be here for the aliens, or you should be here for the tech."
People have lost their lives, actually, Ivan.
No,
So,
I mean that's
people that get
okay.
real close usually end up.
Listen,
with
I'm not.
something.
Listen, dead or alive, I've had a very strange life. I've had many times when things could have gone real south. I'm not really afraid of death. I enjoy living. I enjoy my life. I enjoy people. I enjoy animals. I enjoy the planet. I'd like to see more of it before inevitably, I go. But one thing I would never want to be is a coward. And to me, that's the worst kind of vice. The thing I personally can't stand is cowardice. And frankly, this field is full of quite a number of people who are pretty cowardly. So
but there's been some intelligence officers who've lost their lives over this. I mean,
that may be the case.
Rush and Lou have testified to Congress that's so. I don't think that they were cowards.
No, I'm not saying that
they
they're
served
cowards.
our country and they died.
Well, wait a minute, ma'am. What I'm saying is that certainly, whoever has suffered because of this, whether at the hands of the government or through their own alleged experiences, that's something that the story is yet to be fully proven. Okay, I'm not doubting it. I'm just saying I don't know the substance of it. But what I will say is this: is we all live a certain amount of time. Life is finite, right, for all of us. And I guess my point is I'm not afraid of any negative experience that comes with this, whether at the hands of my fellow man or some blue ball of light. I just won't live that way. So whatever happens. If it's good, bad, Men in Black, abduction experience, I'll just have to experience it.
Sounds like you're running a filter like we have on a lot of our radar, where we're not able to see a lot of stuff, but you are seeing certain things that pop up, maybe not at that level. I guess it's just finding the ways to open.
I'm not seeing it, but you know what?
Yeah.
Look. Also, I'm very unobservant, frankly. So I could probably walk outside. The alien could hand me my coffee. There could be, I think it'd be a UFO parked next to my car, and I would just be oblivious to it. So yeah. I'm not a great observer that way. You don't want to put me at the point man of your squad because I'm gonna walk right past whatever it is.
No, but you're a necessary part of the squad. When Kirk ever went down on a planet, he should have brought with security and legal.
I can do a little bit of both, but what's the last one? Any last one?
Question for the night, Sergeant Daniel. Go ahead.
Yeah, hey, how you doing? So I have a question, kind of regards to the intelligence portion of it. You call it the phenomenon, and I mean, you've talked to a lot of people, and you said you vetted certain clients, firsthand. You use the word firsthand knowledge. Now, what kind of technology are we talking about? Does it look like we've reversed engineered it? Because the school of thought is some people say we have, some people say we haven't. What's your opinion on that? And the other thing is how do you think that the whole world kept this secret at once? And someone else has to have a hand in it.
One question.
So those are kind of two questions, but the first one is, I'm sorry, the first question, if I think I recall it, is have we reverse engineered some of this technology? I believe the answer to that is probably yes. My guess is progress has been made. I don't know. I can't give you any proof, but certainly there are aspects of things that are strange. And I couldn't imagine, James Lukatsky said we got into one of these things, or somebody did. I believe they made some advances, but I frankly don't think that the knowledge is all that necessarily great. I could be wrong. And if it is, being withheld for us, maybe there's some reasons for that. I just can't speculate as the technology. I'm understanding that today's physics is changing and may seem to allow or explain some of the appearances and some of the phenomena. and may allow us in the future to take advantage of that. So unfortunately, I'm not the tech guy, obviously. I'm not really even interested in it, but I suspect we've made some progress. What that means, whether it's, one part of a puzzle, I don't know what to make of it, right? It's like a car. Maybe we figured out how to make the steering wheel, but do we figure out how to make the engine and the transmission? And, I don't know. The second question you asked was what? Could you just frame that quickly?
Yeah, what mechanism do you think is in effect to keep the whole world a secret? I mean, if someone in Africa or Asia or China, they all had their cell phones and, the thing was landing, for the last ever, not just since we've had, artificial intelligence and stuff.
Well, let me look. I would say that I think that my guess is that there's been a very significant effort made to keep this whole phenomena under wraps or under a kind of a control for whatever reasons, akin to a Manhattan Project. Remember, right before we dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and then Nagasaki. I just want to give you a sense of things. The day before Hiroshima, who in the United States really knew that there was an atomic bomb? Very few people. And that project lasted for years and was preceded by a decade of research into the atom. And even when it was dropped on the Japanese themselves, it took them days to process. And unfortunately, in that interim time, either we made an impulsive decision or some might argue a rightful decision, I don't know, but to drop another bomb on Nagasaki, right? So you can see something right in front of you, watch and say, what just happened? We just got a city destroyed, and then apparently go, oh, wait, is this real? And then you have to see another city destroyed before you're like, oh yeah, it's real. We better surrender. I just don't know what to tell you. I just think that human cognition is fallible. Remember 80 years ago, we were in a world war and the Germans were trying to extinguish an entire race of people, the Jews, and others too. It's craziness what human beings can allow themselves. So I would just suggest to you that as impossible as it seems, as absurd as it seems, if I were to tell you 300 years ago there was this country and that was founded on freedom and ideas, but it was also enslaving a substantial percentage of its people, and that it would do so again with the Japanese and you would say that's impossible. They would have learned the lessons, but we just don't. We manage to keep ourselves incomprehensible to ourselves. I think it's because we lose sight of morality and ethics and philosophy, and frankly, the shift has been from a more liberal arts education to one that is very focused on technology and science and math, and all of that is great. They don't have to be opposed, but just because you have tech doesn't mean you're going to have, as the Germans were quite advanced in the 30s and 40s, they were, quite advanced. It doesn't mean you're going to have morality and understanding as freedom, right? So I guess what I could say is I can believe this could happen. It seems, the greatest secret ever told, perhaps, but I believe we'll find out.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the great conversation, Mike. Thank you for working with Ivan to bring him in tonight.
Thanks, everybody. Listen, I appreciate you all.
Ivan, thank you very much for coming, my friend. I really appreciate you stopping by. Great conversation, by the way. Covered a lot of different things, and you made some really good points. And the audience appreciates it. I certainly appreciate it, and so does Thomas. And hopefully you'll come back again to follow up on what's going on.
Well, thanks, everybody. I'm going to do a little bit more appearing on podcasts because I really do think that we need a different tone, a different approach. I think we need to look into this talent gate program in more depth. And I think we need to unify as a community and be more positive with Congress and be more practical. I think there's a lot of points made. We shouldn't put any one person as having all the responsibility of this thing. We should appreciate those in the news media like yourselves, like Ross, like others who are trying to, at great cost, make this a better place. And, whether you're here watching from the United States or elsewhere, let's be positive, everybody. We can do a lot of great things together. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. And you have a great evening, Ivan. Thank you for coming in.
All right. You all take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Oh, great conversation.
It was a fantastic conversation. A lot of good questions, a lot of good answers from Ivan. He's very knowledgeable on many things. And, he's a great family man and a professional and somebody who puts his time and effort into this, as you heard from him, pro bono.
Yeah.
So he's not doing any type of a money grab or grifting or anything like that. He's credible, legitimate, and a really nice guy. So I'm glad he joined us.
In other words,
tonight.
he has other income streams, and he can dedicate his time to this and not get into it. But I got to bring this up, Mike, because you know what I follow here. The Aurora Borealis is out again, kicking tonight. It started up earlier today. This is up in Alaska right now, probably just within a short amount of time ago. Oh, this is about half an hour ago. Let's get another one. They call these cinnamon buns when they go ahead and wind up like this. I saw it earlier today in Finland, and the amount of activity that was going on was just something I've never seen before. Here it is over his house. This is coming from Vincent Lavinda. I know I say that name wrong. Let's get to more things. I'm a part of a great group of Skywatchers now. It's something that I've been getting into. Here's another one, Mike. Breathtaking, isn't it?
It is. It is amazing, Thomas.
Yeah.
That's
phenomenal. If you live anywhere in North America, you have a good chance to go ahead, and you're in the northern states, go outside, look to the north if it's not cloudy. There's an amazing thing going on, especially for our friends in Canada. That's where a lot of the great stuff has been going on. See anything else in here? I can just scroll through really rapidly, quick. Nope. I think those are all the massive ones that have come out. So, Alice, you have your hand up, my dear lady.
Yeah, Thomas. I sent you some pictures of the aurora from my friend in Alaska.
Yes.
Did you get a chance to look at it?
No, let's bring them up tomorrow if we can.
Okay, I'd like her to come on. Is that okay?
Yeah, that'd be, yeah, we don't have anything planned for tomorrow. That'd be wonderful.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, just a lot of interesting things, a lot of great conversations going out today. It was nice having Ivan here, and I just had to share some of the stuff with the aurora going out because a lot of people don't realize everyone is living on their screens, and they don't realize they can actually go out and see kind of things. This is one of the most spectacular solar years we've had, over the last year for the solar cycles, and it's just going to get better as the year continues.
Oh, I'm sure it will. Very interesting things and going on all around us. Anybody could go outside and look up and see it if they're in the right hemisphere.
And you have the right weather to go along with it.
That's true.
It's
Michael Sekuloff, he's up north, but he never has the opportunity because of his weather.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. Good point, though.
There are a lot of good places up in Canada that are seeing this stuff right now, so it's just a matter of finding those locations. So, Mike, I want to thank you and everyone for coming in tonight. It was a great show, great opportunity to hang out with friends.
It was a lot of fun, Thomas. Thank you for putting this all together, and everybody enjoyed the conversation, as did I.
Yeah, what I want to do really quick, there have been a lot of super chats tonight, and I can't go ahead and step away without saying thank you for everybody who threw some money our way tonight. Amazing support from everybody. Ashes on Air, thank you very much for starting it off tonight. Megan Betts, who said, happy Friday, Tomcat. Awesome guest today. Thank you for all you and the DT family do for Disclosure. Thank you, Megan. Brian Pemble, question to Ivan that we asked on air. We got Daryl. No better place to be on a Friday than on Disclosure tonight. Anonymous Rex, thank you, Tim Senor down from Oregon. The only T-word worth mentioning. Just kidding. Hey, Fessler, it's a Lord McCormick. Holy cow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 super chats from Lord McCormick. Holy cow. Thank you very much, sir. I hope your health is well, and look forward to seeing you back maybe Saturday or a week from Saturday, because that seems to be the night when it's best for our friends in the United Kingdom. Remember, we have a show tomorrow, everybody, at 2 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. London time. On that note, I also want to thank Shelley Montgomery, yes, Geraldine DeRazio, Mr. Grimlock, Beach Charmer, and, of course, Brian Premble one more time. And thank you for the thanks to Ivan. It was greatly appreciated, everybody. Wow, what a great show and opportunity to hang out with friends. Mike, appreciate you and the entire chat panel in the back being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Thomas. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and as we usually say on the end of every episode of Disclosure tonight, eyes open, no fear, be safe, everyone. But
go back to Party City where you belong.
Absolutely. We'll catch you on the flip side. Good night, everybody. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Thank you for coming in.